right. I think we're ready to start. Hello. Thanks so much for coming. Today I'd like to talk to you about 7 things I wish I'd known about games before I got my first lead role in games. I'm Nina Roussakoff, and I'd like to start with a little story. When I first entered the industry, and this was in 2005, a long time ago, here in Brighton, in fact, I had the bright idea of making a game with my then boyfriend, Dave. And, you know, that's what you do when you're young and you're in love and you're extremely foolish. And we had a very clear idea of kind of the sort of game that we wanted to make together. And I didn't really think about leadership at all at the time because it was just the two of us, you know, like there's no lead, right? But I did have an idea of what collaboration looks like. And to me, the ideal collaboration is you've got lots of autonomy, you can have lots of creative input, set your own sort of schedules. And I also had an idea of what I thought bad collaboration looked like, and that'd be sort of very confining, like a list of things to do, deadlines, that kind of thing didn't seem like the right thing at all. So I was absolutely horrified to discover that Dave didn't want autonomy, creative input, set his own deadlines. What he wanted was a list of things to do and deadlines to do them by. And so I learned that everybody's different, which is pretty normal, I think, for a 20-year-old. But as it pertained to leadership, really, what the team needs from a leader is not the same as what I need from a leader. And I've seen people step into lead roles, make the same mistake as that, you know, thinking about what does the ideal leader look like to me, and then try and apply that to a team that perhaps want a completely different leader from them. That was then. What about now? Well, I am Nina Roussakoff, as I mentioned, and there's a picture in case you forgot what I look like. I'm the founder of LoveWish, and I'm the head of Studio Hearthlight, which is where we do outsourcing with clients such as Italic Pig, Weaseltron, and Yaldi Games. Here are some games I've worked on. So we've got Broken Sword, and then Beyond the Steel Sky, I worked as a lead scripter. And on Paleo Pines, that was my first game director role. Which, you know, when that eventually we sort of agreed that I was going to do it, was a bizarre experience of feeling an enormous weight immediately fall on my shoulders and massive imposter syndrome. And if I'd known at the time that this was a multi-million-pound project, I don't think I would have taken it. But thankfully, I only discovered that about 6 months ago, so phew. I'm also working on a AAA game at the moment as a producer, but I can say absolutely nothing about it, probably like at least half of you. So in terms of my past experience, I started out in QA and became a QA lead, and was also an indie dev with Dave. Went on to do modeling and animation on IMVU. Worked outside of games as an enterprise officer, and I promise you that will be relevant later. And then I went on to work for Evolution Software as a community manager and scripter, then lead scripter, narrative designer, and technical designer. And now I'm a game director, producer, and also a CEO. So when it comes to leadership, I've experienced it across all levels. I've been a team member on the ground being led by a lead. I've been a lead leading on the ground team members directly, taking direction from a tech director and a game director. I've been a game director leading a team of leads and listening to the CEO. And now that I'm a CEO, no one tells me what to do, except, you know, stakeholders such as publishers and various other people. You're never free from the cycle, I tell you that. So I just want to start off by saying this talk isn't about the sort of stuff you can find online very easily, like the importance of psychological safety, diversity, leadership styles coaching, and so forth, because I figured that you probably at least know half of this stuff already, if not all of it, and also it's sort of freely available. I wanted to focus on basically 7 nuggets of things I've encountered along the way that were insights that really helped me. Because creativity is often subjective, so I think we have a really unique challenge when we're dealing with leading a team of creatives, because you can be in a room with people and you all have opinions on stuff, so there are no hard facts, you know. How do you lead a team like that? Well, I want to start off with talking about the fact that vision is not opposite of collaboration, and I made this mistake quite early on, being really, really worried about becoming a dictator. You know, the sort of thing I'm talking about, right? Really overbearing, there's no creative input, my way or the highway. I definitely did not want to be that kind of lead. But just out of interest, I'm show of hands if you've worked under a lead like this inside or outside of games. Yeah, so like maybe 20, 30% of you. The other type of leadership that I've encountered is quite indecisive. And I feel like I've heard a lot of stories from a lot of, I'm seeing nodding, like a lot of people have talked to me about this type of leadership where, you know, you're sitting in on meetings and the meetings just keep going round and round and round, and then you have another meeting and then a decision gets made, but then the next week it gets overturned and you go back to the original thing and then again, just out of interest. How many people have encountered this style of leadership? Yeah, that's like about 50% of you. So my theory is that people go into this kind of mode when they're really afraid of being a dictator. You know, like you want to be liked, you don't want to be overbearing, you want to leave lots of creative freedom, but that can make it really difficult to be decisive. And the thing is that vision is not opposite of collaboration. Teams often really want you to make a decision when you're in a lead role, because what the vision provides is an answer to why you would bother doing anything. You know, it's the answer to why you are working on something together. And it also gives them a sense of what success is supposed to look like. The collaboration part is about how you achieve that, you know, and the team members can figure out what they do to reach success. And actually, I think people are more creative and have more creative input when they understand what that is. So to give you an example from our Paleo Pines high-level vision document, where we established the fantasy of the game, we said, amongst other things, in Paleo Pines, we are transported back to childhood summers. What that meant for the team is they could think about their memories of going to the allotment with their grandparents, splashing in puddles, what it felt like to be a child, the sort of activities that they enjoyed doing, and really take inspiration from that and draw on that throughout their entire creative process. And what we got was a higher level of quality in the ideas that were being pitched, and the ideas that were being pitched were more appropriate to the kind of game that we were making. Here's another example where I made a chart basically for foliage, because we needed to establish what our foliage was going to look like, and we have a kind of, you know, simple to complex and realistic to toony chart over here, and that helped us align on what kind of style of trees we were going to be making. But from that moment onward, once they understood what kind of trees they were making, they had the creative freedom to figure out what the rest of the trees were supposed to look like. And I didn't need to be overbearing and involved in that process because they had a pretty clear idea of the goal that they were shooting for. Now, there is a gap between vision and reality, and that's really important because there is a kind of tension between it, right? The vision is this grand end goal that you're trying to work towards, and reality is you're not there yet, the game's not finished. And that is what stretches you as a team towards that, right? You're working towards that together. The vision is there to be grand, beautiful, inspirational, motivational, but the reality is you have this team that you have right now, and they have certain kind of skills, experience, you're working to a budget, there's deadlines, you might have performance issues that require you to cut certain things out. And that tension is necessary. That tension is necessary because if we were just doing the things that are extremely grounded in reality, it would probably be boring, right? We want to be creative, so we want to have some sort of vision to shoot for. But the thing is that if you do vision at any cost, that's when you kind of go into this territory of being a bit of a dictator, because if I said I have a very clear idea of what the main character is meant to look like in this game, and I sit with a concept artist to the 1000th, you know, iteration of it, that's not going to be a great experience for that concept artist. And I will be frustrated that they still haven't gotten the character exactly identical as it is in my head. So there is a necessity to bridge that gap, right? The gap between vision and reality. You can either bring the vision closer to reality, and here are some of the ways that I do it in. I mean, we've probably all downscoped games before. When I do that, I tend to focus on the core. You know, what is the bare minimum that is needed to make the game? And make sure that we do that first. But I also like to think of memorable moments. You know, is there going to be something that is going to be really memorable to the player? And I try and see if we can, you know, keep that in the game. Minor spoiler, in Paleo Pines, we have a talking cactus. Does it have any function in the game? No. Do I think that when players encounter it, They're going to be like, what the heck is this? Yes. And it wasn't expensive to put it in, you know, like it fit within the budget, it fit within the capabilities of the team, and it's a really fun, memorable moment for the player. So we keep it in. And last but not least is, you know, it's important to be able to let it go. It isn't vision at any cost. If I pitch something to the team and they're really not up for it, it can be for a variety of reasons. You know, they might be stressed about the timelines, or they just really hate the idea. Is this the hill I want to die on? Like, do I really care whether this character has got glasses or not? Is that really important? Is that going to really impact the player experience? And if the answer is no, just let it go. It doesn't matter. The other side is lifting reality closer to the vision, right? And we need to do that all the time. And there's a couple of different ways to do that. Upskilling, you know, creating a space for the team to grow. On Paleo Pines, we didn't have a level design team when I joined the project. It was just me. And our community management team, I said, you know, why don't we try and see if they might be good at level design? Let's give it a go. We might have some skills that just are untapped. And Hilda turned out to be, you know, showing potential. So over the course of 3 years, we worked together and sort of gradually built that up. She was still doing community management for a period of time, but also doing a little bit of level design. And by the end of the project, when it was really critical to have someone on board that could do this really well, she was fantastic. And 100%, thanks to her, that the beauty of the levels that you see in Paleo were there, and we lifted her up closer to that vision. The other way is to, you know, hire obviously people into the team to fill your skill shortages, or work with really experienced people, like through, you know, contractors or outsourcing teams. On Paleo, we worked with Pitstop for our audio needs, and that was great because they completely took care of it from the top all the way down. And I pretty much only like reviewed it a handful of times, and they just got it, and they got on with it. And that meant that we could lift the entire game closer to reality there. To vision. And then last but not least, plan for things to go wrong in your production, especially if you're working with a very junior team that haven't shipped games before. If you just go like feature, finished, it's going to be really difficult to leave room to polish that and lift that reality up to the quality that the vision that you might have. Number 3, there cannot be collaboration without trust. Now, this one is pretty straightforward, really, but I actually really underestimated how important trust is. And I think that's because I'm generally a really trusting person, so I take it as a given that, you know, I trust people until proven otherwise, but that's not true for everyone. And sorry, I've just suddenly completely lost what I was thinking. I'll just go to the slide. That's right, conflict. Because the thing is, when you are in a place of conflict, trust really matters. When you trust people, you can have a conflict that is productive. People can express their concerns, they can passionately discuss solutions, and they don't feel like it's a personal attack. But if there is no trust, you're going to have bad feelings, bruised egos, and low team morale. And the fact is that conflict is just a fact of being creative. You know, it is a fact of every game development ever. There will be people who will disagree about something on the team. And if you just picture for a moment, like, you know, those people that you work with where the communication is effortless, and I have someone like that, our tech director, Rob. He could come to me and say to me, this is a terrible idea, Nina. I would not take offense. I wouldn't even get emotional about it. It's just like, cool, you think it's a terrible idea. It's not about me. He's bringing a problem to me. And so it's really interesting piece of research by Brené Brown. If you've ever seen her TED Talk on the anatomy of trust, she breaks it down into 7 parts with an acronym using acronym BRAVING. And it's basically boundaries, respecting each other's boundaries, reliability, when you say that you're going to do something, do you do it? Accountability, are you able to apologize when you do things, when you get it wrong? Vault, keeping secrets, but also not talking about people behind their backs. Integrity, are you true to your values? And Do you do the right thing instead of the easy thing? I think that one's really important. Non-judgment. And then last, generosity in terms of give people the benefit of the doubt about their intentions and their thoughts and their feelings, that they're not coming at it from a bad place. Each of these, in her analogy, puts a marble into a jar of marbles. But here's the rub. For every negative interaction, it costs you 5 marbles, 5 positive interactions. And this is critical for things like review processes. If the only interactions you're having with your team are, here are 10 things you did wrong, then very quickly, that relationship of trust is going to come to be eroded. Just yesterday, there was someone who said to me that their art team and the design team didn't know each other at all. And so what they were finding was that when the design team was asking the art team to do things for them, and the art team was already quite overstretched, they would react really badly to it. Yeah, that's because they don't know each other. They don't have any trust in each other. So what if there is no trust? Well, get to know people as people first. Now when I join teams, I spend some time with the team, with every individual that I'm going to be working with, just a little bit of time, even half an hour, just having a chat about like what they like, what they enjoy doing, what they don't enjoy doing, and establishing at least a little bit of trust up front. But also it's really important for the team to get opportunities to get to know each other. You know, I work with fully remote teams. You know, establishing trust with fully remote teams, it takes time and effort. You need to actually consciously make it happen. Otherwise, you're just sending each other messages saying you did this wrong. And then last but not least, like if you really are in a place where you don't trust each other anymore, you need to have conversations that require courage. In my case, there was someone I was working with, and we were sort of like of a similar level, but different teams. And we started off with a really great relationship at the beginning of the project, but as the project went on, I increasingly got a sense that I wasn't trusted. I felt watched. I felt like every time I suggested something, it would be shot down, and you know, it wasn't a good, comfortable place to be in. And so I asked for a meeting. You know, can we talk about something? I went in there and I just laid it on the table. I said, you know, I feel like you don't trust me. And that's a really difficult thing to say. You know, I felt so vulnerable in that moment. My heart was really going. It was hard. But he said, no, actually, I do trust you. And then we had a really good conversation about like why it had happened, what had happened, why it had happened. And by the end of it, I came out of there feeling a lot better. And in the months that followed, our relationship was really productive. We got so much done, you know? I'm really glad I had that conversation. Number 4, people decide emotionally and justify rationally. So again, you know, I put that emotion on the table, and that was really important. Have you ever been in a room, in a meeting with people where, you know, they start talking about something, I think we should put monkeys in the game. And the other person goes, no, but that doesn't fit with the world, though. You go, but yeah, but we have giraffes, so we'd made that exception before. Like, yeah, but there's some reason. And then that conversation just keeps going, and people are arguing about it, and you feel the emotions, the tension in the room just rising, yeah? That's because there's something else going on. Like, there is some sort of emotion, and it's not being named, and people are just talking about the rational side about it. So if I catch that moment, what I tend to do, you reach a stalemate, right? Like, you go nowhere. You go nowhere when there's an emotion in there somewhere. So what I tend to do is I name it. I try and name the emotion if I have an inkling of what it is. So like in this hypothetical scenario, let's say the artist doesn't want to do the monkeys. The artist is very overstretched. There's a fair chance they're just feeling overwhelmed with the amount of work, right? So, you seem a bit overwhelmed with the idea of monkeys. Are you worried about the timelines? Are you worried that you have too much on your plate? Whatever you think the emotion is, even if you get it wrong, that's okay, they can correct you. But you put the emotion on the table, you can have a conversation about that. And the nice thing about it is that once you've dealt with the emotion, you can actually have a rational argument about it, an actual rational discussion, and come up with a solution. But sometimes people will still be like adamant, no, we can't do this. And as a lead, sometimes you need to still push through, right? So it's important to acknowledge what is happening. I hear you. you feel a bit overstretched with this, or you don't like monkeys or whatever it is, why don't we try out like making one monkey? And if after doing one monkey, it really is quite hard to do and it takes, 10 weeks as you thought it would, then, we can change, we can adjust for that, or, let's try a prototype of it, or whatever it is. Start with something small, just to push past that barrier of people being worried about whatever it is that they're worried about. I also find it works the other way around. Like sometimes I'm the one who's decided emotionally, like, I don't want monkeys in this game. I don't know why. I don't know why I don't want monkeys, but do you have any idea? Like, what might be wrong with monkeys? What could be my concern? Like, if I'm not sure myself. Sometimes I'm sure. Sometimes I know. Quite honestly, guys, I just don't like it. Let's just move on. I don't think this is a good idea. Sometimes that's okay. If you have a relationship of trust and people know that it's okay for you to say that, you can. Which brings me to nugget number 5, be curious, ask questions. You might have noticed there were some questions there. Questions are great. So I worked as an enterprise officer for a period of time outside of games, and my role was to help students set up their own businesses. And this was very interesting because I was not a business advisor. So I was told by my manager, you are not allowed to give any advice to the students. We are not insured for it. As a lifelong geek and a purveyor of knowledge, and someone who really loves telling people everything I know about things, as I am doing right now, this was really hard. I was like, how on earth am I meant to support these students without telling them, the things that I know? Well, I was supposed to ask questions. So I'll tell you a little bit about the most popular idea that students have for a business, and that usually involves some kind of app that students can manage calendars with and find out what all the offers are from the pubs, right? This is, at least 3 students have pitched this completely separately across a long period of time. But so the question that I had to ask was, who's your customer? And they would often say, it's the students are the customer. I'm like, okay, well, who's paying you the money? Well, it's the pubs. So who's your customer? And that realization, that very cynical realization that students are the product, not the customer, as cynical as that is, was really important to the business that these students were making. So the thing is, the questions are really great for learning. So as a lead, if I'm working with a junior and working with other people on the team, and I want to pass on knowledge, there are lots of things that it's just better for me to ask them questions to help them solve a problem, rather than me just saying, this is how you solve it. Sometimes that is the right way, click here, click there, and then it compiles and you'll be able to run it. There's no questions there. But for a lot of things, questions are great for learning. They're also great for guided exploration. So let's say you have a sort of very high-level concept of you're going to have forests in the game. And you can sit down and talk about what kind of forest. Is it evergreen? Are the trees really tall? Are they short? And asking those questions, you can help direct a team towards some kind of solution. And that encourages their creative contribution and input as well. They're also great for clarification and alignment. Not everybody's going to picture everything exactly the same way. So by asking questions, you can get a little closer to understanding each other. And here's an example as well from Paleopines again, where we did a chart of what different aspects of each, it's a bit small, but don't worry, you don't need to read each individual bit. But the top one is simple silhouette on one hand, complex silhouette on the other hand. And then basically I asked everybody, all the art team, to chart where they thought the game was meant to be. And then I had a chart that I made where I thought we needed to be. And what that did is it meant that everybody had time to think about this question, and then see how far out they were and recalibrate themselves to their understanding to what they were supposed to be doing. Because if they thought the silhouette was meant to be complex, they understood that they were really far out from that. They're also great for staying calm. If somebody comes to me and says, Nina, this is terrible, I might, maybe I might get a bit emotional about that. I'm not completely flawless. And so in that moment, if I can catch myself, and I have the witherall to say, oh, why is that? And then start asking questions and staying with curiosity, it helps me to stay away from the kind of more negative emotions as well. And I think that's really important when you're leading a team, is to not kind of let that spill out. The last tip is ask juniors first if you're asking for opinions. Because if you ask your seniors first, then the juniors are probably going to fall in line with whatever their seniors are saying, or, you know, it just feels more psychologically safe. But only in low pressure situations, of course. Like, you know, I'm not going to go up to a junior and go like, this massive fire, what is your opinion on it? That's not very comfortable. So number 6, confidence does not equal competence. This is an interesting one because, you know, what is the number one trait that people hire for in leadership? It's confidence. But the overlap between confidence and competence is really small. And I found out about this through an article in the Harvard Business Review by a professor of business psychology at UCL. And it has this very clickbait title, Why Do So Many Incompetent Men Become Leaders? And you can imagine why I might have wanted to read an article such as that at the time. What it says in there is, when it comes to leadership, the only advantage that men have over women is the fact that manifestations of hubris, often masked as charisma or charm, are commonly mistaken for leadership potential. The reason why I thought this was really interesting, and I read into that and also into the book that came after, was not so much about the comparison between men and women, but really the fact that there was this very small overlap between confidence and competence, and like all the other very interesting things that article talks about, such as narcissism and various other things. We are, in fact, really bad at knowing what good leadership looks like at the hiring process. Now, here are some studies that sort of talk about that overlap. So here's a meta-analysis of, and there's hundreds of studies in this, over 20,000 people. There was less than 10% overlap between how smart people are and how smart they think they are. On the other hand, we've got a study done with some students. They were asked to rate themselves and decide like which percentile of students they were in. And the bottom 25th percentile rated themselves above the 60th percentile, while the top students of above 78th percentile rated themselves as being in the 70th and 75th. We are basically really bad at assessing how good we actually are. And the thing is that the more you know, the more aware you are, the more aware you are of what you know and what you don't. And expertise increases self-knowledge, which includes awareness of one's limitations. And conversely, the less you know, the less aware you are of your limitations, and the more overconfident you will be, also known as the Dunning-Kruger effect. This is from quote from the book. And as it pertains to leadership, when competent individuals lack confidence, they will prepare more, act with caution, and become more aware of potential risks and obstacles, all of which enhance their performance. Which means that at the end of the day, actually confidence in terms of leadership doesn't matter at all. The only thing that matters is competence. So look out for confidence bias when you're recruiting for leadership. You know, like as a game director, I've been involved in recruiting, obviously, leads into the team as well. And this is something that I've been looking out for. But also, leadership skills are not glamorous. I think it's very easy to sort of picture what a leader looks like based on, you know, these sort of charismatic individuals that we know, such as Barack Obama, or, you know, you look at films and there's these leaders that do these great speeches and things like that. But leadership skills are being organized, being able to sit down and have a good chat with someone and ask them, you know, being a good listener, having empathy. It's a lot of really unglamorous things that if anybody made a Hollywood film out of it, it would be so boring. But the upside to this is that actually, if you're sat here in this room and you're thinking of going into leadership, or you're already in a leadership role and you're having all these doubts about like whether you're any good, chances are you probably are. So point number 7 is that I realized I don't have to have all the answers. I think this one is pretty important because when I was When I first got into my first lead role, I thought that I had to have every answer. And when a team member would come to me, I'd be like, oh my God, they asked me something, I'm not entirely sure. I'm gonna ask the tech director or whoever else I needed to ask, and then they'll tell me. And I felt so much pressure to know everything. But the team don't need that from you, because if you don't know, you can just admit, like, I'm not sure about this, why don't we find out? Or, hopefully you are not the smartest person on your team. Like, I don't like being the smartest person on my team. I'd like to work with people that are smarter than me, and then my role is just to make sure that they know what they're meant to be doing. And I think if you've ever encountered someone who does have all the answers with absolute certainty, you will recognize that that feels like that, like absolute truth. I've been completely blindsided by, let's say, someone who once said to me, this genre does not have this feature in it. And I'm like, what? But I've played several games in this genre with this feature in it. Am I stupid? Am I missing something? Like completely falling apart in doubt and taking like a week to recover from that and going, no, actually, I have played games in the genre. They definitely have this feature in, but it's that confidence again. It's so compelling. When you encounter someone who is so confident of everything that they're saying, it does make you doubt yourself, but it feels like that, and that doesn't feel great. So as the last kind of thing that I want to add to that is that what I found was once I started to accept that I didn't have all the answers, and this was many years after I'd started working in the lead role, I found out that the tech director that I'd been, finding out answers from actually felt a little bit put out by the fact that I never acknowledged that the knowledge came from him. And now I'm very careful and mindful that I credit people appropriately, because if you think about it, it's not great. It's not a great feeling, right? You're passing all this knowledge on and someone else is benefiting, like in terms of with the team dynamic from it. That's not a great feeling. And I don't want to do that again. So acknowledge that you don't know it and tell who does. So here are my 7 nuggets. Vision is not opposite of collaboration. I'll just get out of the way. There is a gap between vision and reality. There cannot be collaboration without trust. People decide emotionally and justify rationally. Be curious, ask questions. Confidence does not equal competence. And I don't have to have all the answers. Thank you so much. Are there any questions?
Yep.
Do we have time for questions?
Yes, we've got time for questions. Everybody put your hands in the air. We will get a mic to you.
Hi, Nina. Excellent talk. Thank you. Oh, and by the way, I think tall men often get voted into leadership positions because that's how basic the human brain is. Okay, quick question. So when you work with people as a leader, you've expressed that people want leadership in different ways. Mm-hmm. So some want autonomy, some want a list of things. Do you ask them this or just figure it out over time? What's your approach? Thanks.
Yeah, that's a great question. So as part of, when I said get to know people, as part of that process, I often do sort of say, oh, well, what does your ideal collaboration look like? What do you need from me or from, the people that you're working with? I try and get at least an initial idea of how people work best. But sometimes it's just something you have to pick up over time. Like you start working, you go like, oh, well, this isn't working so well. That person, I thought they really wanted a lot of autonomy, but actually that's just not very productive for them, and they work better in a more structured environment. Well, one thing we do at Love Wish is we have like very flexible hours, so people can work across pretty much whenever they want, even if it's in the middle of the night. And I think a lot of people benefit from that, because that works for them. But in the contract, we make sure that we always say, like, if you prefer to have fixed hours and that's what you want to do, then just say, and we will agree, like, you're working 9 to 5. It's just anticipating, like, what is it that's going to work best for hopefully the most people, and then adjusting it for the people that are the outliers. I've got a question over there.
Hi, interesting talk. In a post-COVID world, a lot of work is done remotely, and it's becoming harder to get to know people as people because you end up just doing the work, fighting the tasks. You don't have those water cooler moments. Have you found any strategies that work in the current world, I guess?
Yeah. So one of the things that, so obviously, as I mentioned, I try and talk to people individually, so one-to-one. I think one-to-one conversations are the easiest to kind of build rapport quicker when you're doing it online. But in terms of the team, we do some activities as well. So for example, we played Starbound together and just spent some time together as a team. We have like kind of the occasional online social that we organize, but also the entire Love Wish team is here at Develop this entire week. Like that is important to me because we need to have opportunities to come together and spend time together as people and just hang out without the pressure of like stuff happening with work. I know that can be hard though when you have people like in other places in the world and that doesn't always fit with the budget. But there are definitely other ways to do that. The other thing that I do is I try and create like small channels. So like channels in our Slack that are only a few people together, and so they can have slightly more intimate conversations in there that they might not be doing if it was like the entire team in a general channel. Yeah. Any other questions?
Sorry. Thank you. Thank you. That was a great talk and 7 very tangible sort of takeaways. But I was just wondering, for someone who isn't quite in a creative leadership role yet, but aspires to move there, what could that person, me, do in their everyday sort of job to help them demonstrate that they do possess skills or have potential to one day grow into that role?
Yeah, sort of that you're ready for it. That's a great question. Are you currently sort of like in a senior position or?
I'm like a mid-level producer.
Mid-level. Okay, yeah, okay, I see. So because I think for me, I found that it was, you know, as I moved more up in seniority and being able to kind of like spend some time mentoring people, building those relationships with the more junior members of the team is always good. It's about how well are you able to contribute in meetings. I know that's really tricky and it can be particularly hard as a woman. Sorry guys, but there are some stats that are not, but there's some research that shows that women are perceived to talk more than men. So what I found, for me at least, what was a successful strategy is to think very mindfully of like the moments that I choose to speak. I pick, I know that what I'm saying is hopefully going to be a good contribution. And I try and keep it brief because I am aware of the perception that if I talk too long, that people will think, oh, she's always hogging the conversation. You know what I mean? So it's just being mindful and picking the right moments to contribute that show that you are ready to guide others.
Incredibly annoying. We have to do that kind of emotional labor that comes so easy to others. Thank you.
Hi, great talk, by the way.
Thank you.
I was in a position that I was managing a part of a project as someone that wasn't that experienced, like 3 years experience, more or less. And I was having to manage people that were a lot more experienced than me. Do you have any advice on how to deal with that? Because I felt like sometimes I wanted to press on something that they weren't doing or that they should be doing different because I knew how I wanted that to be done. But I didn't want to press because like they know so much more than me. They ship so many more games than me.
Yeah.
I would get nervous about it.
Yeah, that's so understandable. I have been there so many times. And I think it's especially difficult when working with people that are very confident. I find that I doubt myself a lot more. But I think the thing is like the role that you have when you're in a leadership position is to make the best out of the team, right? And in that, you can be the absolute authority if you're seeing things that are not working for the team. That it doesn't really matter how much experience someone else has if it's not productive, if there are obstacles to the team, being able to progress, because they're really dependent on this person delivering or something like that. And even though that person might be adamant that they want to work on thing A, if thing B is the thing that's blocking everyone else, you are the authority to say, actually, you really need to focus on thing B because of the rest of the team. But I think the other thing is working with seniors, working with people that are far more experienced than you. Your role as a leader isn't, as I said, to have all the answers. It's good that they have the answers. Ask them, what do you think? We have this problem. This team is blocked. You want to work on A. The team needs you to do B. What's the solution here? And maybe they say, well, actually, I'm not the right person to do B. It should be this guy, or whatever it is. They might come up with a solution themselves. You can put it back to the team. Rely on their seniority. Rely on their experience.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks. So I was wondering. So in my side project, I've had I'm trying to assume a leadership role, even though I'm not quite skilled enough yet. And there's something that I have consistent trouble with, which is knowing. So you talked about vision, gap between vision and reality, and being the opposite of not the opposite of collaboration. And then one thing that was letting go. I guess the question is, do you feel that sometimes there is a hill that you need to die on? And how do you know how to separate that from a hill that you don't die on,
Yeah, I get you. Yes, I definitely have felt about some things that there were hills that I would die on. And to give you an example, in Paleopines, for those unfamiliar, it's a dinosaur farming sim. So cute dinosaurs, farming, kind of Zelda, Breath of the Wild-esque aesthetic, just to give you a rough idea. And in there, the dinosaurs spawn with different colors. And I identified pretty early on how important that would be to players. It was going to be super important to them, these different colorations of dinosaurs. So there came a point on the project where I was like, we really need to focus on this, and we really need to have as many different patterns as we can. But it was right near the end of production, so we didn't have much time. And the team didn't feel it was that important, but I was willing to die on this hill because I was like, this is going to be really, really important to the player, really core to the player experience. This is one of our core pillars as dinosaurs. This has to feel great. And yeah, we did have, that conversation. But I think in terms of working out what those things are, I guess it really is about having a very clear understanding what your high-level vision is. I don't have it on me, but I wish I did. Establishing the core pillars and having a really good idea of the description of what they are from how it's meant to feel. That is what I take as my guideline. Does this feel the way that this pillar is meant to feel? And if it doesn't, it might be something that is worth dying on. The hill, I mean, not the pillar. Don't die on pillars. So yeah, but it is subjective. So gauge also the team. How tired is the team? How fed up is the team? How much damage are you going to do to that relationship of trust if you push through? And sometimes you just have to let it go, even if it really sucks.
All right, thanks.
Sorry, it's me again. Some people hog the conversation. I'm glad you mentioned design pillars. Do you come up with design pillars as the dictator in your slide earlier, and then point to those when people are going off track, or do you get buy-in on those design pillars from your team so that it's easier to point at them and get people on track?
Yeah, I mean, it's sort of, I suppose I'm in a unique situation in that I inherited an IP from someone else. So I did establish those design pillars, but they weren't mine. They were basically me having conversations with the team and trying to understand what people thought this game was first. And then once I had those conversations, kind of go okay, well, these are the common elements of what people seem to be saying about this game. Here are our 4 pillars. So it was derived from the team in that particular case. On our internal project, it was me. I sat down and I said, these are the 4 pillars, and I gave it to the team. I was working with a very junior team, and I felt that it was more appropriate to demonstrate to them what it looks like before seeking buy-in. But I think probably with a team that has done it before, I would probably, have those conversations, like what kind of game do we want to make? Yeah.
Thanks.
Yay, one more.
Now that you're in a more sort of general leadership role, do you feel like you apply these rules differently to different parts of the team? Is it different, like, to say it very binary, do you apply them different to coders or artists? Is that, how's that dynamic?
Yeah, so just to clarify, are you asking, does leadership look different depending on whether you're leading coders or artists? Or
I guess so.
Yeah, okay. I think there is probably some difference. Like, every discipline in games is creative, even programming. But I think programming, or certainly on the tech side, there is more a case of there are some answers that are simply right, that someone that is experienced enough needs to make a judgment call on. So I think it does slightly change it, whereas I think when it comes to game design, all you have is the experience of other games that you've drawn on. But if you're doing something completely new and innovative, you will not have answers about it because there is nothing else you can draw on. I think you probably would agree with me, Nigel. Sorry, Nigel was my lead designer when I was working at Revolution. And I think if you're doing something that's like in a genre that everybody already knows, there are some genre conventions, you're trying to kind of repeat the success of things that you've done, you're building on the success that you've done in the past. There are some answers that are already given. But if you're innovating like right from the ground up, nobody knows, and I think that is different. Yeah. There's another question there. If we have time, I don't know. Are we doing okay for time? Yeah. Over there.
Oh, sorry.
Hello. Yeah, great talk. You posed this talk as 7 things that you wish you knew beforehand. Are these all of equal weight, or would you say that a couple of these are maybe more impactful early on than others?
Yeah, I don't think they're all of equal weight. Originally, it was actually 10 things, so I've had to trim it down. I think for me, the really big one was people decide emotionally, justify rationally. I think that was something that kind of when that clicked, I was like, oh my God, like that changes so much about how I've seen things happen in meetings and how people interact with each other. And I can solve so many more problems now by understanding this phenomenon. But I think early on, I don't have to have all the answers was really important. Also, vision is not opposite of collaboration. There cannot be collaboration without trust. That was really important. Be curious, ask questions is just something like once I learned to do it, the more I did it, the better I got at it, the more I got out of it. That's just been building and building and building. I think in theory, if you want to, just as a thought experiment, imagine you could lead an entire project only through asking questions. What would that look like? You could still lead. Like, it is so powerful. You can ask a question that leads to answers and gets people where they need to be, pretty much for everything. All right, I think we're all done now, so thank you very much.